Hey, what's up everyone? Craig here, and we're back in my garden, my own patch of paradise. This is my own tropical styled garden in Dorset, UK, which is close to zone 9B. You've had a look in the garden a few weeks back when I just moved all of the tender plants out from my greenhouse. Now the weather's really starting to warm up. It's relatively early in the day today and the sun is high in the sky and gleaming off the top of my head. I showed you my succulent collection, but now I'm going to show you the border behind me. This is what I'm calling the evergreen big leafy jungle border. Catchy name, I know. But I've actually put all of the plants into the ground now, and I've decided where they're going to be growing this year. And I've added a few new plants and planted out some tender tropicals that I've not actually set free into the ground before, so they should grow like mad this year. Fingers crossed. So yeah, let me show you the details on this border. So one of the easiest plants I'm growing that is the most successful and gets asked about so much on Instagram and on YouTube is this. This is a Fatsia. Fatsia polycarpa and a cultivar called green fingers, yeah. And it's got these really deeply lobed palmate leaves. And it's this super deeply lobed leaf that gives this plant its distinction. And I've actually struggled to grow this. It seems to like a lot more sun than other Fatsias, but now it's in the ground and it's in this spot and it basks in the morning sun. It's put out this beautiful new flush of leaves. Now Fatsias are evergreen, so I get these really tropical looking leaves year round. And for me, having a garden that looks good year round is really important. I see so many tropical gardens that just disappear in winter, and I like to look out on a garden year round. So for me, this plant has been invaluable. But you can see some of the older leaves down the bottom are looking a bit tatty. Now that's fine. As with so many other plants, as this new flush emerges from the top, the old leaves will droop and drop away, and I'll just pick them up. It's so important not to get too worried or fussy about yellowing leaves or leaves that have holes in, because plants want to survive. Sometimes this is just a natural part of their life cycle. But yeah, this amazing tropical style plant, as I said at the start, is Fatsia polycarpa and a cultivar called green fingers. Behind that, which I showed you in a recent video, is my loquat tree, Eriobotrya japonica. Now again, this is evergreen, and it's just breaching the top of the boundary fence, which is great. I really want to soften the boundaries in our garden so that as you're looking out, you don't see those harsh edges. It just softens it away, and that as deep a border as I can get will just give that perception of more space. I love loquats. I can't say it enough on this channel. They are, again, really, really easy to grow. They can be a bit more expensive if you buy a large specimen, but I've actually grown a few from seed this year. But look at that texture on the leaf and a lovely serrated edge. It doesn't look like the sort of tree that would be evergreen in the UK, but they are, and you get that lush tropical style in the middle of winter. Now I'm trying to go for layering, so this loquat should go up and over the fence. Just below it are my Fatsias. Now in the same family as Fatsias, Argyranthemum, are Schefflera. Now I've shown this a lot on the channel, and I recently showed it when it was pushing up this new flush of leaves. But they're starting to settle down now. They sort of emerge upwards and then hang down, and it's got this really graceful habit. This Schefflera is Schefflera taiwaniana. Now this is one that people are really desiring this year. Actually, it's been really popular for a few years because it is completely hardy. Well, for me, again, in zone 9. And look how tropical these leaves look. Now, a lot of people that have seen this plant on photographs on my Instagram account have mistaken it for Begonia luxurians, and I can see why. Begonia luxurians, and I have one here, is called the palm-leaved begonia, and it has that same palmate leaf shape. But Begonia luxurians is completely tender. It cannot take any frosts or cold at all. But the Schefflera taiwaniana will give you this lush tropical looking leaf all year round. So that's going to add to this tropical style garden in the middle of winter. So you can see how these first 3 plants are just going to be here year round. They might not look this lush and green in the middle of winter, but I'll still have structure and something to look at in my tropical style garden. Now, another plant which is pushing up and over the fence is my Musa basjoo. This will grow like absolutely mad this year. Musa basjoo is the hardy banana. It's pushed out these first 2 leaves in the past maybe 14 days, and you can see a 3rd leaf is emerging. This should be up and over the fence within a month or so, and you can't beat those sail-like lush green leaves for a tropical styled garden. At the moment, because I've just planted everything into the ground in this border, you can see there's a bit of a battle for space. But as each plant finds its way, they will kind of come into their own and they won't be so squashed in. Now this big leaf here, which is just starting to droop in the sun a bit, but it perks up as soon as it gets into the shade. This is actually an Impatiens. Impatiens tinctoria. Now this is from South Africa, so it always surprises me that it droops quite so much in the sunlight. But this is an absolutely giant Impatiens, one of my favourite. And you can see that the first flower buds are just starting to emerge. I think the common name is Dyer's busy lily, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic plant. This is completely hardy for me. It dies right back to its rootstock and will shoot again in spring. And all of this new growth has come in the past 4 to 6 weeks. It's an absolute giant. I love it for its leaves with their serrated edges, but also for the flowers. I will show you some pictures of the flowers from last year. They are beautiful. They are absolutely massive. People that come into the garden think they look like orchids. And I realised that when I was watering the garden of an evening, the flowers are night scented. And because they're white, so many white scented flowers are night scented because that white colour glows in low light and attracts nighttime pollinators like moths. So this is a fantastic plant to plant near somewhere where you spend those evenings having barbecues or nice drinks, because you will just be draped in that beautiful fragrance. This one will die back in winter. Now, this is my Brugmansia Maya, which is the variegated Brugmansia. Its early flowers have bloomed and passed, but it is putting on lots of growth. This one is still in a pot. I haven't planted it out. I think I will just pot it on because this is tender and it will need to come inside in winter and be protected. So by keeping it in a container, it makes it so much easier to move it indoors to protect it. But it shouldn't be too long and I'll have some new flower buds emerging here. Now, a tip with Brugmansia is you can always tell when they're going to flower, because when the branch splits and you get that Y shape, let's see if I can find an example. There's one from last year. That's when the flower buds will emerge. Sometimes people get frustrated, including myself, when the plant just grows and you just get leaves and stems and there's no sign of flowers. Give it a high potassium feed, something like liquid tomato feed, and it will encourage that prolific flowering that you get on these plants, and it will give it everything it needs to start producing flower buds, and it will encourage it to grow these Y formations. Now behind that is another plant that has been super popular on Instagram and on the YouTube channel. This is Pseudopanax laetus. This hasn't produced any seed for me yet, but when it does, I will be sure to have a go at growing it for the Grow Paradise shop. This is an evergreen shrub from New Zealand with these huge palmate leaves, but the leaves are much more round than, say, the Schefflera taiwaniana. They're in the same family, which you can see the resemblance. This one has grown like absolute mad, and it is also just starting to push over the top of the boundary fence. Now, being evergreen, this is going to be a great backdrop for me, even in the middle of winter. It's taking up a lot of space, but this year I'm going to let it do its thing, see how much space it takes up, and perhaps have a go at chopping it and maybe doing some stem cuttings later in the year. Let's go down to the lower level. So for me, one of the most exciting things about growing tropical style gardens is emulating kind of the layers of a forest. So you could see I had my canopy up at the top with the loquats and the bananas. God, that sun is really starting to get hot. Then the middle canopy with our Scheffleras, our larger Impatiens shrubs. And then down below, it's packing in all of the sub-shrubs and ground cover plants. And that will give you that really lush tropical jungle look in your garden. So if we go over to this end of the border, all the way over, there we go, you can see I have a begonia. This is Begonia pedatifida, again a really popular plant. And this one's just pushing up its flower buds. I love the bright red stems and these architectural leaves. Now this one's looking a bit sparse because I've just done a load of cuttings for the Grow Paradise shop. But it's fantastic. And this one is completely hardy so long as it has good drainage. Now for me, you can see this is growing in a pot. That's because in spring and autumn, I knock it out of the pot and propagate from this plant. And you can do that from its rhizomes or from leaf cuttings. Lovely fern. I absolutely love my ferns. I think they just, I don't know, it's the texture. You get so many different types. This one, I can't remember which type of fern it is. It's been in the garden from the very, very, very early days. These two actually used to flank a stream that we had flowing down where the gravel path is now. Go and check out my early videos to see how many iterations this garden has been through. And at the back, you can see I was moving another fern leaf out the way. This is Woodwardia radicans, or the giant European chain fern. This thing becomes absolutely mammoth. Now this one is still growing in a pot, but I'll give you a quick sneak look at one on the other side. Look how big this gets. And this is only half a frond because I've been brutal and chopped the tip off so that I can actually walk through the path still. These are great plants. It's hardy for me in zone 9, but they're not completely UK hardy. If you can get hold of them, it's definitely worth a grow. And the more established they become, the bigger the fronds are that they push out. And you can see they've got this golden colour as they're emerging. One of my absolute favourite plants, and I'd like to try some more of the Woodwardia because a big ferny leaf, for me, says jungle like not many other plants do. Right, let's go back to my tropical style border and back down to the underplanting. Oh, I've missed one. This is Begonia evansiana. You can get different cultivars with red backs and different flowers. This has a pink flower, and this one is called Herons Pirouette. Now you can see it's a bit squeezed in. This was planted 3 or 4 years ago, again, when this was a pond with water. And I completely forgot about it, and we built the deck, and then the nursery grew, so we've got all these plant shelves and the greenhouse. But luckily, it had just enough space to push up through. Oh look, you can see the old pond liner there. So this one keeps coming back. Begonia evansiana. When it's happy, it will produce bulbils, which is its way of reproducing. And as they land on the floor in autumn when the plant's dying back, it will form a nice colony of this plant. You'll get masses of these jungly begonia leaves topped with flowers in late summer. Just at the back here, another begonia and another giant. Can you see that I like big jungly leaves? This is Begonia fusca, an absolute mammoth and one of the biggest leaved begonias you can buy. Now, this is still a small specimen and it's a stock plant for me, so every time it pushes out a new healthy leaf, I come in with my secateurs and I butcher it. Now, growing a garden and selling plants is a double-edged sword. Nothing quite gets to reach its full potential because I'm there waiting to propagate from it. But you can see just how big these leaves get. Yeah, Begonia fusca, a great plant. Now this one is tender, or it has been for me. So this is growing in a pot, which again, I'll bring inside come winter. Right, let's go back a bit. This plant with its daisies. You might not think this plant looks particularly tropical with these daisy-like flowers, but this originates from Madeira, and it's, I think, Argyranthemum by pinnatifidum, and I love it for this foliage. It has, if you forget these flowers for a minute, right, there you are. Look how nice that is, and this has been hardy for me in leaf all winter in zone 9B, and it just adds a really different leaf texture to the garden in those colder winter months. I think it looks really, really tropical. Now these daisy flowers, although not especially tropical looking, they're nothing like Brugmansia or hibiscus, they do add a different dimension to the garden, and it flowers early in the year. So with so many tropical plants, they take a lot of summer heat to start flowering and look their best. It's nice to have something that produces a bloom earlier in the year, and the pollinators love this. I've actually got 3 of these planted in the garden because I love white flowers early in the year. Absolutely great foliage plant. Now let me know if you like this, or is it just me? Just peeping through at the back there is Salvia confertiflora, the Brazilian sword or sabre salvia. This is the one that has those lovely red spikes. Now I overwintered this one in the greenhouse and I thought I'd lost it, but I planted it out with my fingers crossed and it's pushing out new growth. Whether it's too late for it to flower, we will find out. But hopefully we'll have some nice red, exotic looking salvia flower spikes pushing through the top of this tropical border. Where should we go next? Down here. This very cool foliage plant is Persicaria runcinata purple fantasy. I absolutely love this for its purple chevrons. This is one of the easiest plants to grow that you can get your hands on. It will grow where you don't want it to grow. So just be careful because it can spread. Every time it touches the ground, it will put roots out from one of these leaf nodes. So you can grow it in a container or put it in the ground. I've planted this out and I will just keep it in check. But what a foliage plant. It is so interesting. And I like to have different textures of foliage next to each other because it's all about the contrast in your planting that creates visual interest. So we've got this really serrated leaf next to the coloured triangular leaf with the Persicaria, but just below is a nice round, almost lily pad looking leaf. This belongs to a plant called Asarum europaeum, which is the European ginger. Now when you think of gingers, especially in a tropical style garden, you think of these long herbaceous stems with sword-like leaves. Now I looked up why this is called a European ginger, and apparently the roots have a whiff of ginger about them, but it's not edible, so don't try. I really like this plant because, again, it's evergreen. So when plants like the Persicaria die back a bit in winter, I'm still going to have this evergreen foliage down at the front of my border, which will stay next to this semi-evergreen fern and this evergreen plant from Madeira. So it's about that balance. You get transition and more interest as the seasons move on, but having evergreen plants just means you get a bit of consistency, a bit of backbone in your tropical style garden. Cool, my voice is going. I can talk about plants non-stop. Right, at the back here, we've got Sonchus fruticosus, an absolutely massive dandelion. This is a tree dandelion, again, from Madeira. I'd love to visit Madeira because so many great plants come out of that island. Now this is growing like mad, as you'd imagine a giant dandelion to do. I grew this from seed and I've grown a lot more, so there will be plenty in the shop. Now I have known this to be hardy and evergreen in zone 9B if you can keep the frost off it, and it was in quite a well-drained spot. This, where I've planted it, is very rich, very moist soil that has been enriched with spent mushroom compost, so we will see how it gets through winter, but I'm going to leave it out as an experiment. But again, you grow this primarily is a foliage plant. For these long, wavy leaves, it's going to add a lot of visual interest, and this will grow into a nice big, almost like a rosette of leaves. Now, down in front of that, we have another Impatiens. Now, when you look at the size of this Impatiens, compared to the Impatiens tinctoria I showed you at the top, you can see why that one has giant in its common name. This one is Impatiens flanaganii, which is a great name. It has a very similar leaf to Impatiens tinctoria, and most Impatiens have this kind of ovate leaf with a serrated edge. This one's got slightly pinker stems, and this produces hot pink flowers. Now, a friend of mine has grown this in his garden, and it forms a big tuber underground, and it has been perennial and hardy for him. So I'm going to leave this planted out. I will take cuttings as a backup, but I'll leave it planted out to see if it survives in my garden. I'm really getting into finding what plants will survive winters in my tropical styled garden. Partly because I like pushing the boundaries of what I can get away with in an English garden, or a tropical styled English garden. And partly because the online plant sales business is growing, and it's being supported so well by everyone that watches this channel that I don't have the space to overwinter plants in my greenhouse anymore. So finding plants that survive British winters that look extremely tropical is a win-win for me. So yeah, you'll see this bloom later in the year with its pink blooms. Now, next to it is something I'm really, really excited about. This amazing textured foliage with these silver streaks through the leaf is Pilea. Now, Pilea are normally sold as houseplants. It's that one with the round leaf that you see on every hipster cafe's windowsill. This is Pilea Matsudai Taiwan Silver. And being from Taiwan and the mountains, it tolerates cold really well. It has tripled in size since I planted it out, and it should be hardy and perennial. So I've taken cuttings, and I'm going to be selling a lot of these on the online shop. But I'm going to leave this tester plant in the ground, and we will see how hardy it is. I have been told it's hardy to beyond -5, so I will give it a good mulch in winter. But look at how textural these leaves are. Now you can see it's in the nettle family. A lot of the new plants I'm growing this year are in the nettle family. As those of you who subscribe to the channel know, I go through fads, and obviously serrated edged leaves with this cool texturing is something that I'm into this year. Yeah, Pilea Matsudai Taiwan Silver. Down the front here, which is a plant which is trying to shrug off attacks from snails and slugs, is a solanum. Now, I think I've put this in too much of a shady spot. It had a lot more sun before everything else around it grew so big. So we will see if this one makes it through, or I might pull it out and grow it in a pot in somewhere a bit sunnier. This is what it's all about. Don't overthink things too much. Sometimes you just have to take action, experiment in your garden, see what works and what doesn't. You can always move plants. This is Solanum quitoense, which is in the tomato family, and look how spiky the leaves are all along the leaf veins there and on the top. Now, this is grown from seed, and you can grow it like ricinus, because from seed to a well-established big leafy shrub in a year, it is very, very quick. So it's a great tropical looking foliage plant, but obviously it has to get past the stage that the slugs and snails are getting to it. This is a very damp corner of my garden, so the mollusks are prolific here. Behind it, which reminds me actually why I planted this here, the coloration, the purple veins with this kind of glaucous bluey green leaf, picked up the same colours on my purple sugarcane behind it. So I planted the sugarcane here. This is Saccharum officinarum rubra, or rubrum. This is the purple sugarcane. It has these really, really cool leaves with this almost magenta purple midrib going through it. Now, I only grew this in a pot last year, and it grew like absolutely mad. So this year, I've planted my stock plant into the ground, because when it was growing in a pot, it drank up so much water. And in this damp spot in the garden, it's really going for it, and it's putting up so many different shoots and canes. And you can see it's another leaf shape added to this border. So by having the grassy leaf shape next to this nettly looking leaf shape, the Impatiens, the triangles of the Persicaria, the serrated leaves of the Argyranthemum, and then the ferns, it's just so much more interesting to look at. So we'll see how this sugarcane does planted out. I have kept a couple of plants in pots in the greenhouse just in case I lose this one. And then carrying on that purple theme is my Iochroma cyaneum. Now, Iochroma are in the same family as Brugmansia, which is those giant flowering angel trumpets. But this is a smaller flowering, almost a miniature version, relative of Brugmansia. It flowers prolifically. I mean, if I move it around, you can see how many of those cool purple flowers there are. But this is said to be hardy. Now, I left this plant outside in a pot, and it survived winter in my garden this year, so I thought I'd risk it. I've planted it out. It's finding its spot. It's sending up shoots in all directions, so it should form a nice shrub in this area that will be covered in these purple flowers. As I say, a lot of the plants are battling for space at the moment, but they will find their own spots with a bit of help from me and my secateurs. At the top here, this very cool purple, this is a blue flower. This is Salvia macrophylla, purple-leaved form. Now, it has amazing blue flowers, which again are loved by the pollinators. Pollinators absolutely adore salvia flowers. They don't seem too keen on that Brazilian sabre salvia because the flowers must appeal to something local in Brazil. But they love the majority, and this purple leaf will kind of show you how it got its name, the purple-leaved form. Now, I love this plant. This is still growing in a pot. I've taken a lot of cuttings. It only has one issue. The leaves absolutely stink of a drug that you can smoke. And now my hands are going to stink of it. And I do wonder what the neighbours are going to think I'm growing in my garden. But yeah, I'm really into salvias. Let's go back a bit. Back. You can see that I'm obviously a plant addict, and I'm squeezing as much as possible into this border. Oh, talking of drugs that you can smoke, this one is Rubus lineatus. Again, a really cool leaf. Have you noticed that these palmate leaves are great for adding a tropical look in your garden? They just look really exotic. Now, this one is in the same family as brambles. It will root when it touches the ground. And this one is possibly from Taiwan or China. But I love this plant. It's semi-evergreen for me. I'd call it half hardy. I had one plant survive winter and one not, and I got down to -3 in my garden. But look at how beautiful those leaves are. That palmate shape and really nice corrugation going through the leaf. And you can see it on woody stems at the back here, and each spring it pushes out new stems and lots of new foliage. I've put it here because it gets a good microclimate. This Pseudopanax laetus, which is evergreen, will give a bit of a canopy over the top of the plant and will hopefully stop any frosts killing it. I've planted this out, so we will see how it survives this winter. Just in front is that Begonia luxurians, that palm-leaved begonia. This is a fantastic plant. I wouldn't be without it. I wish it grew as well as a house plant, but Begonia luxurians does not do well inside a house. It does okay in a greenhouse. I think it needs a lot of humidity. Now, this one's still in a pot, but I'm going to plant it out because I've planted one out on the other side of my garden, and it is loving life. The leaves are getting much bigger and they're splaying open, and it looks really nice. This is the mountain papaya, Phascanella pubescens. It has these really cool architectural leaves. It grows as a tree up on a stem, and when it produces fruit, the flowers come out from the middle here. Mine hasn't flowered yet, so I haven't got any fruit. Hopefully I will. Some people say you need 2 plants to get this to cross-pollinate and produce fruit. I've seen it happen with just 1, so I'm not sure how accurate that is, but I've not had enough experience with this plant to make any claims. But it is a great foliage plant. And just in front of it is a plant whose name I can't remember, something like Parasithianthes lepantha. And it's got very similar ferny foliage to Albizia. I think this one's from Australia or New Zealand. And I grew this from seed, I don't know, 3-4 months ago. And it's got very tall, so they are very fast growing plants. And this is said to be half hardy. So this is an experiment. This is growing in a pot at the moment because they like good drainage and I'm on heavy clay. But it's a nice contrast again of leaf texture. Serrated and lobed leaves, palmate leaves, salvia leaves, suspiciously scented salvia leaves, and then this. We're coming to the edge of this border, so I'll show you the last couple of things. This is a really cool shrub or tree if you let it get massive. This is polycarpus, and they are hard to find for sale, which is a shame because they have amazing long foliage. And this is Polycarpus salixifolius, so willow-leaved Polycarpus. This is evergreen, and you can see how that having another interesting leaf in the middle of winter is going to help create visual interest in a tropical style garden, even in the cold winter months. Let's come down a bit. This one, another lily pad looking leaf. This is a shade loving hardy plant called Farfugium giganteum. Now again, I've been out here propagating this plant, so it's not yet living up to the giganteum part of its name. But this is an evergreen Farfugium that will provide visual interest in winter, completely hardy, but slugs absolutely love it. So because of that, I've kept this in a pot. And you'll notice that a lot of the plants that I keep in pots are either because I'm using them as stock plants for the Grow Paradise shop, or because slugs and snails love them, and having them in a pot is just another deterrent. What else have I got in here? A cool leaf. So those of you who subscribe to the channel will have seen me grow Geranium madurense, or the cranesbill geranium, which is an absolutely mammoth flowering geranium that looks super tropical. Now this is a geranium as well, but it's much easier to grow. It doesn't take up anywhere near as much space, and it has a very, very similar flower. There you go. This is another one the bees are loving in the garden, and you can tell that they love it because once it's flowered, it produces seed pods, which is a sure sign the pollinators have been on it and done their job. And then it self-seeds everywhere. Now, some people hate this plant because it self-seeds everywhere, and sometimes the foliage can be a bit pongy on a rainy day, but I actually quite like it. Super easy to grow, loads of flowers, quite early in the year, which I said is often hard to find in a tropical style garden. And it's a really nice tropical looking flower as well, in my opinion. Let me know what you think. Just behind that, which is still in a pot, is my Brillantasia eriobotrya or something like that. It's not actually a salvia, but its common name is the giant salvia. Now these leaves can get enormous. Again, I'm a sucker for these textured leaves. And the flowers are so long lasting. They're these giant salvia looking, almost translucent purple flowers. I'll get a picture up from when it flowered last year. This I discovered growing in the garden at Great Dixter, not from a visit, but from scrolling on Pinterest or Instagram, and I had to get it. It just looked absolutely amazing. Once I plant this out, this will become a massive foliage plant and a great backdrop as it grows taller, and it's going to flower up high. It is a really, really nice plant. Now I've realised there's one plant that you all love that I've forgotten to show. Colocasias. Colocasia pink china, Colocasia black coral, which is doing really well, and some more pink china. Now I've planted pink china out into the garden around this water bowl, and I'm hoping that as it establishes, I'll get a nice hardy, yes, pink china is hardy, this is why it's so popular and so many people are asking for it, a nice hardy Colocasia display of these huge elephant ear leaves. It's still quite early in the year and it's still getting established because I've only planted it out recently, but I will add one of every Colocasia I grow, so I need to add a blue Hawaii and Colocasia esculenta, the standard species, into this area around the water bowl because I think they just look so good reflected in the surface of the water. Hopefully you've enjoyed this look around my tropical styled garden border. I'm splitting my tiny tropical garden up into sections. So as I said at the start of the video, you've seen my succulents, you've now seen the tropical jungle border, and the border just next to me here is just coming into its own with all of the African queen lilies pushing up through a euphorbia. So soon I will show you that when it is in full bloom. And just behind the camera, I've got a narrow border, and I think I've decided what I'm going to do with that. And I get a lot of people asking how to do a tropical styled garden in a narrow border. So hopefully a future video where I show this border will give people ideas for that. Now if you've enjoyed this video, please hit subscribe. It's such a fantastic and easy way to support the channel. If you're in the UK, visit my plant and seed shop where I sell homegrown and locally sourced tropical and exotic plants as well as seeds. And this t-shirt is another way to support the channel. There's links at the end of the video and in the description. Now thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.